Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Maria Sapochnikova, and I'm an advisor, a Russian advisor to the Next Century Foundation. So the topic of my discussion today is perspectives on the role of Russia in the Middle East. And we can all agree that that role depends on the outcome of the war Russia launched against Ukraine last year. So these two subjects are interconnected on so many levels that one can be looked into without the other. And well, however, let's return back to the Middle East. And if I have to give a general observation, it will be a very simple one. The Russian ambition in the Middle East today is to take the place of United States that United States was occupying for the good part of the last century. So establishing dominant position, firstly with countries Russia considers its allies and expanding this position. It can be seen, for example, in yesterday's meeting in Moscow between President Assad and Putin, and today's Moscow meeting again with representatives of Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Russia. So far, it resulted with the President Erdogan agreeing to officially meet President Assad, which is a big step, actually. Of course, the final outcome that Russia hopes for these meetings will be the removal of the American troops from Syrian territory. And there is a big chance they will eventually succeed. I can, go on and recite more news and that I'm sure all of you are already aware of. There is an agreement of Russia to deliver fighter jets to Iran. And of course, well, the big talk, and let's talk about it, it's the elephant in the room, which is China. That the country is the real power, in my opinion. The country is the real power player today and decision maker in the region, as well as many other places today. So I have to emphasize this Chinese role, way more important than the Russian, and still underrated, although recently signed Iran-Saudi pact brokered by China is a wake up for many. So when I was preparing this discussion earlier, I was looking at the name with my colleagues at the Next Century Foundation, and the name that we will give to this discussion. And my colleagues attributed the name Perspectives on the Role of Russia in the Middle East. And what I really wanted to call it is how to curtail the Russian role perspectives in the Middle East, with some actually concrete suggestions. And that I personally think can make a real difference today. There is a real world shift that is happening today, the power shift that will bring us back to disregard individual freedoms and democracy, and will amplify the powers of autocratic regimes. And we can all observe it right now. I believe the change of the approach is essential in order to preserve the balance in the world of today. For quite some time, the only way to deal with the changing situation from the Western perspective was punishment and the sanctions, etc. And in some cases, very successful and necessary, of course. But I think the time has come to think of alternatives. And I'm talking about this time about incentives that will rather encourage governments and individuals in the Middle East to look at the Western leaders as equal partners and not righteous parents. So for me, the biggest appeal of the idea of the Western democracy always has been the right of individual freedom and success. And I know I'm not the only one who shares these views, and that needs to be put forward today very much. So there is recently has been an article in The Economist by Alexei Navalny's chief of staff, Leonid Volkov, where he says personal sanctions need rethinking, offering those individuals on the list a way out would weaken Putin's regime. For those who are not familiar with the article, I recommend to read it. It's quite interesting. I personally think that this can be applied not only to Russian individuals, but unless we take steps to change our approach today, the Western influence in the Middle East, and not only there, will be undermined, bringing really our civilization backward yet again. So, in my conclusion to this short speech, uh, there are other, of course, important strategies that needs to be implemented along with what I just mentioned in order to curtail Russian ambitions. But since for Russia, and they often put it forward, it's a question of so-called values. We have to really start promoting authentic Western values. And I'm convinced personally, and not only me, they are way more valuable in its essence. So that is what I want to talk about today in terms of role and ambitions. Thank you so much. I'm ready to answer all your questions.
Wow, that's very interesting. And it was great to hear your unique perspective. Um, let's see. We have, let me pull up all the questions right now and I'll put a little, let me check. Sorry, we have many platforms we work on, and I just want to pull up all the platforms to see what kind of questions we have. I have one question that says, can you discuss a little bit more about the role you have at the foundation and what the goal of the foundation is in the next century?
Okay. My role at the foundation, I was the head of the Russian department at the foundation before the war began. But since the beginning of the war, I mean, the whole idea of even being, since I don't represent at all the Russian, the official Russian views at all. And so I just changed it a little bit into being just an advisor to the Russian affairs worldwide. And our foundation been established since 30 years and mostly dealing with Middle East. And since the war with Ukraine, it's promoting peace. It's, it's promoting peace and conflict resolution and negotiation all over the world. So that is basically what we do. And we have a consultative status at the UN. So we can have interventions there, written one or verbal, so which we do, like written statements that we give at the United Nations. So that is what our work actually consists of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, I have another question for you. It says, hi, thank you very much for your talk so far. Could you elaborate a bit on how you see Iranian and Russian relations developing in light of the China-sponsored resumption of Saudi-Iranian diplomatic relations?
Well, I talked about it briefly. I truly believe that China has much bigger role and much more important player in the Middle East or in world politics, and it's just because people tend not to take it so seriously. So this really showed who is the authentic player is in this region. And in terms of Russia, as you can imagine, depends on so many factors because its economy depends on all these economies that are Iran and China. So more China doesn't really depend on, basically China is the player who moves the pawns like Russia in this game. So Russian relations with Iran won't change in that perspective. They will be playing the game that China imposes.
Wonderful. The question was from Frederick. So I'll allow Frederick a moment if he wants any more additional elaboration on that, or I'll just allow for a moment for other questions to come through. Thank you so much. Great. I have another wonderful question from Frederick. Thank you so much. This question, that's very interesting. Do you think that Iranian military support for Russia is playing a significant role in Ukraine?
Well, I do think because they do supply the drones, I think military support in terms of technology, yes, it is because Russia, as we found out, doesn't really have that much technology, and the one they were like so much trying to convince us before the war. So yes, it does. It definitely does have an impact. And even if there in the future, China will decide to provide the technical support, I don't think China will start supplying weapons per se to Russia. I don't think so, but definitely maybe technology for drones or any kind of other technology, because it's in their interest if you want to continue for this war to continue, because there weakens Russia. They have cheap resources that they're getting at discounted prices. So yes, I do think those are, yeah, definitely. Well, Iran does it for different reasons, though.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, I see there's some panning in the room. Is there a question in the room? Oh, yes, we have a question in the room. We actually can't hear you. If somebody could turn the microphone on in the room, that'd be great. Microphone's unfortunately still not on. I'm not, yeah, unfortunately, there's some technical difficulties. I don't know if you could maybe switch the microphone, or you're welcome to type the question in. There should be a computer in the room as well. Sorry for the inconvenience. And thank you for your patience. We're actually not able to hear any questions from the room. So either if the AV people in the Decatur room can hook up the microphone, or feel free simply just to type in a question. Oh, okay. Yeah, feel free to type in your question there. I can see you in the webinar chat. I believe they're typing their question now. Okay, here's a question. Are you able to read it yourself, or would you like me to read it?
If you can read it, because I can't.
No problem. Russia is touting its support of traditional values. How do you think this might impact American public opinion?
And that is exactly what I wanted to talk about, because traditional values are not Russia. At the end of the day, it's basically what they're using. It's a very populist view, easily touched. You concentrate on these things, and you forget the big things, that is a dictatorship and autocracy, and there's no values in killing people and having no freedom at all. So that a question of where the world is maybe not ready to everywhere to accept others' freedom, and maybe there is a question where we have to look at ourselves and say maybe we became too dictatorial towards imposing the freedom that we want. That's why that kind of backfires. So the balance, and because I believe the true Western values is the values of freedom, and freedom is balance, is the right for others to express themselves, right to succeed, right to be who they are. And this is what has to be this is what has to be put forward, that what has to be promoted today in the West, in order to not to allow Russia to so-called bring the traditional values of whatever they are, because it's very questionable, those traditional values. that they are trying to really say they are, promoting. Because if you look deeper, there's no values really in it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your input. Do we have, and your thoughts on this, do we have any other final questions at this time? Just checking briefly. Oh, yes. I have one more question. Thanks again, Maria. Would you be able to elaborate a little more on what the quote way out you refer to for Russians subject to Magnitsky sanctions would involve?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you were saying. What would be the
Well, it says, what would be the way out you refer to for Russians subject to the Magnitsky sanctions would
okay,
would
yes. So what is, so now any Russian who is outside of Russia, all their assets are frozen, they are under sanctions, and that is even pushes them to come back to Russia. Okay. But I do believe those people, those individuals, they are thinking individuals, they understand the value of freedom and success that they are not ready to express in Russia because it's a autocracy. But being that they have no choice, since if they try to, I'm not talking about everyone, it's a selective, now we cannot put everyone black or white, but there has to be a more thorough look into these sanctions. Maybe there's some people, they do need this opportunity as an alternative, having that choice where they can choose to actually work against this regime that is today in Russia, but they don't have the choice because they are not accepted at all anywhere in the West. And this is what actually this article, I highly recommend for you to read it, because he says it's way better than I do. That that Putin had that interview recently where he recommended actually for the Russian oligarchs, so-called oligarchs, that they are not like they're haunted in the West, and that they should come back to Russia, and they will be taken accepted back, which I don't even know. But since they have no choice, there is a question where if you give these people, and selectively again, the opportunity to maybe choose, they can come to be this basically the motor in changing the regime today in Russia, because it has to come from these kind of people, I believe. And that's the only way of future for Russia, is the regime change. And these people might be able to maybe do something about it.
Thank you so much for your insight on this question. Let's see if we have, are there any other additional questions we have? I'll leave it open just for a moment. And just checking in case somebody has any follow-up questions as well. So thank you for your patience, and thanks everyone. I currently don't see any final questions. Do you have any last thoughts you would like to wrap up on?
Well, I just wanted to say that, the situation today, the situation that gave the Russia, or they say China mostly, even the opportunity, where the way they approached the world is this, non-judgmental, supposedly economic friendly, and they managed to win so much. But it's maybe a bit radical, but we do have to start looking at things differently, because they do gain ground. And there's the Middle East is still a place where there's a lot of Russian propaganda there, don't get me wrong, but there's still an opportunity to do things the way that we don't have to later on regret it. And there are still ways to keep that keep that presence, and try to make that try to basically the time is now, what I'm trying to say, because it's going to be, once it's going to be gone, it's going to be even harder to change in the whole world. The whole shift that is happening in the world will be inevitable. So we have that history in our hands, and we should really make it happen so we don't have regrets later on for our future generations.
Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions, so we'll end here, but I just wanted to thank you again for sharing your insight. This is such a complex issue. And as you said, obviously has very long-term ramifications around the world, not just in the Middle East. So thank you so very much for your time. Thank you for your work. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And we look forward to seeing our other panels at the Middle East Dialogue. So thank you again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.